round of applause for Ali, Batten, and Kamp to tell us all about their
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tracy, for hooking it up. Thank you all for your mornings. We're new here, so thanks for welcoming us into the community. This is a little different for me. I don't normally write a speech. It's a bit of an experiment. We're going to see how it goes. So for context, because I don't think a lot of you know us, I'm Dan, this is Ali, and we are Batten and Kamp. We're a design art duo, and we make functional sculptures. Our training, for myself, I'm an industrial designer originally, and Ali is an architect. But we work in the art world predominantly. So we're using our skills and our tools as designers, not so much for solving problems, but for self-reflection and self-expression. So we're less concerned with the practical. More our works focus around conceptual and poetical themes. The themes in particular that most of our works explore, or many of them, which we only really identified when reflecting on this particular topic, are comfort, progress, and place. Meaning we make domestic objects, a lot of it's furniture, that question the nature or the notion of home. So these are functional works, most of them, but really they're tools for contemplation. That's how we see our works. We've been asked to speak about the theme of nomad, and I think we both hesitated a little bit to apply that word to ourselves. But yeah, the truth is for the last 3 years in particular, we have been kind of living everywhere and nowhere and working all over the world. And we've had no fixed abode. We've lived in Airbnb, sublets, all sorts of different places. We've worked in different workshops and studios. And what it means to be a nomad is to have no conventional home. This is a really interesting range of emotional and psychological and professional effects. So it's very energizing, it's very expansive, and it opens us up to opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have presented to us, let alone be able to actually undertake. But it also can be exhaustingly and kind of unproductively dislocating. So we wanted to talk a little bit about both sides of this lifestyle. To sustain this lifestyle, we have to find other ways of thinking about home, other definitions of home, and which is a sense of place. We need a sense of place. What is our constant through all of this? And we don't really have any answers for you, but we have been exploring this a lot in our work for the last few years. So, I'm going to get straight into it. And I know we only have 20 minutes, but if you'll bear with me, I'm going to start 800 years ago. 800 years ago, there existed a culture of voyagers, a people who crossed impossible distances against impossible odds to settle sparse and tiny oases in an unfathomably large sprawl of uninhabitable space. These were the Polynesians. They were the widest spread culture on Earth, settling all corners of the Pacific. And they peopled the last places on Earth to be peopled. Our best guess as to how they achieved this is culture, along with probably the most advanced navigational technologies of the time. They had a culture of adventurousness, one where it was normal to sail by the stars into the unknown, with the intention to find a new home or to expand their existing homes. Their destinations might have been specific, they might have been vague, or in many cases they may have been mythological. Some of them likely returned home, many of them likely perished at sea. Some of them eventually made their ways across the tides and against the winds to a small set of Pacific islands that they called Aotearoa. 300 years ago, Europeans set out with the same goal. They were searching for a mythological continent that they called Terra Incognita, which was hypothesized to exist in order to balance the great northern continents so that the Earth didn't tip on its head or something. They finally achieved the same feat as the Polynesians 500 years later. They sailed against the tides and against the winds and find a small set of islands in the Pacific that they called New Zealand. It's at the intersection of these two voyaging cultures that our nation was born. And today we call it Aotearoa New Zealand. It was formed just a few hundred years ago. So for context, Notre Dame was likely finished, or at least the construction had begun, before people even set foot on the continent of Zealandia. And it is a continent now, recently affirmed. So New Zealand is very, very new. 35 years ago, Ali and I were both born in New Zealand, myself in the North Island and Ali in the South. We were born to quite different families, but with similar tendencies. Ali's parents were designers. I was raised on farms, but both of our families and our parents were serial renovators, and we were always moving, both of us. So our home environment, our sense of home was always shifting. We eventually made our way to the same university where we studied design, we fell in love, and we've been making creative projects together ever since. 8 years ago, we packed a couple of suitcases, our degrees and our small amount of professional experience, and we moved to Hong Kong. And when people ask why Hong Kong, I think over the years, I've found the best answer is that it was just as different from what we knew as possible. So we left the green and the beautiful black shadows of the New Zealand forest for the black nights and red neon of Hong Kong. Subsequently, we discovered that Hong Kong is more than just this cyberpunk super city. Actually, there's an access to nature here, and importantly for us, an access to materials that is a really unparalleled combination of the three things compared to anywhere else we've been. And it's here in Hong Kong that we started Batten and Kamp. From the very early days of our formal joint practice, which began in COVID, we've been working with galleries both locally and internationally in order to make such an extremely niche practice a full-time job. 3 years ago, we got an Instagram DM from the founder of the world's leading design gallery, Carpenter's Workshop Gallery. We signed with them, and we moved to Europe to be closer to the gallery while we cemented our relationship with them, but also to connect with our peers, because while this field of design art, or collectible design is a term I don't like, but is very common, is kind of a thriving scene in Europe and the States. There's very few, if not no one, doing what we do here in Hong Kong. And since then, we've worked in France, the UK, other parts of Europe, US, Turkey, New Zealand, Bali, Japan, and of course here in Hong Kong. Now here is where I want to acknowledge that it's an immense privilege to live and work the way that we do. It's enabled by our success, but our success is built on layers and layers and layers of luck and support. So it's something, this nomadism is not something we can be proud of, it's only something we can be grateful for. To return to the Polynesians, of course, not everyone was a voyager. While some people left and explored, most stayed on their beautiful, safe islands. They built and they maintained their communities. Because what good is exploring new ways of living if some people don't simply enjoy home as it is now? Here are two sculptures, two sister sculptures, and two different but symbiotic, innate human drives. Longing for the space between stars and longing for the company of trees.
Home is Earth. So comparatively to the rest of the world, New Zealand is really young. And I think that it's more defined by its natural history than it is by its human history. Things like the ecology and the geology feel more central to its culture. Growing up for us in New Zealand, it felt like absolutely everything happened somewhere else. art, design, film, literature, science, music, all of it was made somewhere else, and you had to leave in order to participate in it and build a life around it. But nature was something that was always ours. It was something that happened in New Zealand. It happened in front of our eyes and at the tips of our fingers. And the memories that Dan and I carry from childhood were formed almost exclusively in nature. Climbing trees, running through forests, swimming in rivers and oceans, snow-capped peaks and endless farmland. It felt like our hands were always in the dirt and our faces always towards the sun. This is our common language, and when we're creating our works, we do so by using the natural world, both physically and metaphorically, to understand our place within it. I believe personally that it's the central home to our practice. We use stone a lot in our work, which is a literal fragment of the earth, hundreds of millions of years old, and serves as a symbolic connection to the land in which we stand. And can I just say, it's absolutely not lost on us that we are physical designers, spatial designers even, making very, very heavy work, but trying to live without being tied to a place. Another natural element that we've been working with a lot are branches. And one of our latest completed series is Echo, the branch light sculptures. On a recent trip back to New Zealand, we were having our once yearly existential crisis about who we are, why we don't belong in New Zealand, why is no one asking about our work. Just the classic stuff that happens when you spend too much time with family. During that summer, there was an unseasonal wildfire in my hometown and a pretty devastating cyclone in Dan's, which decimated a lot of his family farm. On an island as small as New Zealand, you feel the weather physically and acutely. There is absolutely no hiding from it, and how it's changing is evident. We remember with our bodies what the climate used to be like, so when it changes, it feels fundamental. So we took our 3D scanner to these two locations and we trawled through debris and found branches that we could digitize. And like the very best parts of our work, it felt like an adventure. We were running across these absolutely smouldering port hills of Christchurch, smudged black with soot, and having the time of our lives. I must disclaimer that absolutely no one was hurt in the fire. We wouldn't be doing that otherwise. And there is nothing that gives us greater purpose in our work, gives us more perspective about who we are as designers and the absolute miracle of our existence at all than when we're playing together in nature. At the time, we were digitizing all sorts of physical, natural forms like coral, flowers, even dinosaur bones. Objects that carry stories of the land we belong to and things that didn't last long, and certainly things that we couldn't carry with us to our various homes around the world. This process was definitely an antidote to the fact that we didn't have a physical studio to collect things in. So we took these digital memories back to our studio in Paris, 3D printed them in aluminium, and suspended them in lights, which we call Echo. Next to it is Titan. So maybe home is this beautiful hunk of rock beneath our feet, mostly floating on our own in an infinitely large cosmos. Maybe. Home is family. Here we go. 1 week before I went home, shit, good start. This is really getting you up for your Friday. 1 week before I went home for the first time in 3 years. Oh no. I got an email from my mum saying she'd been diagnosed with motor neuron disease. And she'd been given, oh no, this is not the plan. She'd been given between 2 months to 2 years to live. Even prior to that call, I had so much trepidation about going back to New Zealand. COVID had kept us away, and there was such a nice simplicity to the fact that for the first time in years, we had nowhere to go. It was during this time that Dan and I started Batten and Kamp, And we had been living in this beautiful creative bubble that felt completely self-sufficient. And we were fortunate enough to be really safe, so it was a very creative time for us. The trip to New Zealand signified an end to that quiet period, and I was going to a place that didn't feel familiar. And although we'd spoken a lot, our families had changed and aged, and now I was losing Mum. I was so terrified. It felt like in an instant, home didn't exist. That invisible home that you take for granted, the one that's tied back to someone through your blood and bones. At its absolute best, I thought this trip home would be a reunion. Perhaps we'd share battle stories and reintroduce the new versions of ourselves to each other. But I had a week before my trip to catch my breath, to figure out how to be there for both my mum and brother, when I hadn't even begun to figure out how to be there for myself. So, as you can imagine, the idea of who I was and the entire world around me felt called into question. Before this point, I had seen myself like a steady continent, something with mass and surety, something propped up and supported, something immovable and safe. But I realized I was just a small raft, and I was fragile, and I was just drifting around in the ocean. I was scared shitless, and I'd never felt more lonely. I realized that all of my courage should travel bravely out into the world, to be an artist in a pandemic of all times. To take risks and believe blindly in my abilities was based on the consistency and love of my family. I hadn't realized until then, but I believed that they were my sure thing. They were my constant, and because of that, everything else could be unknown. My mum was someone I could always fall back on, and we talked all the time about almost everything. She was by far Batten and Kamp's biggest advocate, and at no point did she ever doubt that we could do it. And to be clear, absolutely no one gets into art because it's a good idea, or a stable income, or just a good career move. And I was losing my loudest cheerleader. Just to contextualize this period, so a few months after her diagnosis was when we decided to leave Hong Kong for Paris, leave every form of support network we'd made, and move even further from New Zealand. So 20 minutes is definitely not long enough to psychoanalyze that, so message me later and we can talk about it. Thankfully, mothers are ridiculous, they're crazy strong, and she has outlived her 2 months. And although we're on borrowed time, we've had more time than we could have imagined. So during these last few years, living between 3 homes and in a constant state of loss, I've had to learn how to build a strong, large community of people that I could define my sense of home around. Something big enough that it was flexible and resilient. Dan and I have always been lucky with making friends, but a community feels like something different. We're learning to not take our relationships for granted and to really work on them. And as people prone to moving on, that was actually quite a lot of learning for us. But I'm proud to say that we have people we call family across the globe, quite literally. I think I've realized we're all just floating around in the ocean together. And although we have to figure out how to be enough on our own, maybe we can throw lifelines out to each other and tether together some sort of shaky new continent. And I do definitely feel less lonely, and my community is helping me find my courage again. The work we do as Batten and Kamp has been both an outlet for these experiences, but also something for us to build and centre our community around. Through exhibitions, collaborations, projects, acquisitions, we've had the opportunity to meet our people, and they are everywhere. So Forever and Ever and Ever is a sculpture we made for my mum, and the only thing that has ever made its way back to New Zealand. And it lives in her garden, and it explores the futility of trying to look for permanence.
Home as a project. The elephant in the room during any conversation about contemporary nomadism is, what are you running from? Our habits of moving, driven by curiosity and ambition, or by avoidance. And while I and others in my situation might answer that we're not running from something, but toward many things, that may or may not be true, and it's really hard to say. But what I'm certain is that there exists in us, and maybe in many people, this kind of tension between searching and building. Do we search to find the community and the places and the people and the things where we can live the life that we want to live? Or do we build them right where we are? Do we terraform other planets? Or do we fix the one we have? Perhaps we can find some kind of symbiotic configuration of these two human tendencies. This longing for the space between stars and this longing for the company of trees. Ultimately, I think what we've been exploring for the past few years has been belonging. Do we belong in a place, in a family, on a piece of rock, hurtling through space, or even, in our case, in a particular aesthetic universe? To be nomadic means to have many homes, or to take your home with you where you go. So what is that constant for us? What is our anchor? As two overthinking artists who take everything too seriously, including CreativeMornings talks, apparently.
Sorry.
Perhaps the only thing that we can be sure about, the only constant that we have, is that for us, home is an ongoing project. Thank you. How are we for time?
I don't know, I didn't count.
We're going to conclude with a very short film that we made about the same topic that will conclude this better than I did.
Still thinking of elsewhere, still missing home, still somewhere between here and there, still turned to the past, still with my head in the stars. Still exceeding expectations, still craving quiet, still needing space, still under canopies in the rain, still at the source of the Rewalker, still floating on Lake Tekapo, still far beneath Aoraki, still with my feet in black sand, still with my hands to the ground, still in my mother's garden, still caught in the currents, still making the most of it. Still climbing trees, still climbing hills, still branches after storms, still tui song, still moving glaciers, still Milford sounds, still speaking to flowers, still speaking to her, still feeling lost, still knowing where home is, still choosing to be elsewhere. Still alone in Shangwan, still dusty from sight, still crowded, still 2 million marching, still hot at midnight, still safe, still brave. Still in the future, still everything ever, still barely holding it together, still optimistic. Still lying in long grass, still running through the jungle, still tired, still grieving, still quiet. Still with my face toward the sun, still with my head in the clouds, still light years away. Still children, still beginning, still mistaken, still hopeful, still nature's verse, still insignificant. Still at the river mouth, still floating, still would give it up, still wishing, still writing. Still a sister, still a daughter, still an artist, still a realist. Still somewhere between sleep, still the morning, still time.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Like a real personal.
Yeah, for a Friday, that was more Monday vibes.
No, we truly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Those are the most beautiful ones. So I'm sure that there are some questions from the audience. I'm going to give
Thank
you that one.
The questions don't have to be equally heavy. But
That's true. We are funny too.
Thank you for that talk on Niharika. It was so beautiful. Both of you speak so beautifully and evocatively.
Thank you.
I wonder what role spoken language plays in your design. How do you articulate your vision to each other? How do you articulate your work after it's done?
That's such a beautiful question. Starting on a high. Dan and I talk constantly, and I do really think it's sort of most of what we do in our practice. Just all the rest of it happens later. So certainly both speaking and writing is really important for us.
More so than designing.
I think so. Yeah.
It's basically a big conversation, and pieces kind of pop out of the conversation once in a while.
Yeah. Anything? No? Thank you.
Do you have conversation frameworks? Or do you need to have cues to pull yourself back when a conversation gets...
No,
Oh,
we just let it.
We
just
need
let
those
it go.
cues. Like, we'll, start at 8 in the morning, it'll be 4 o'clock, and we haven't done any work. And we're like, feel a bit sick and oversaturated by our conversations.
It's very organic.
Yeah, we need
Very
some
organic.
cues. Yeah.
Great, great talk.
Thank
I
you.
can relate to being somewhere but nowhere. I'm from across the ditch,
Yeah.
and
So,
the question I have is, starting any business in Hong Kong is tough. What would you say would be the toughest thing about being artists and starting a business in Hong Kong?
It's been interesting for us because, like I said, what we do is very unusual here. And in some ways, our audience has never really been Hong Kong. That's not entirely true, because here there isn't a design art as a discipline doesn't have its own industry. So instead, we've just been welcomed in by the art world, the fine art world. Starting any business in Hong Kong is difficult. Starting any art business anywhere is difficult. In some ways, I would say that Hong Kong has a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
It's so small in many ways and so dense that you have access to things that I think you don't elsewhere. It's a small place, but we have Art Basel. It's a small place, but we have Pace and White Cube and all these big galleries. And they are a little more accessible than they are in other places. Of course, some of that probably comes from being an expat and having the privileges. But I do think that actually Hong Kong is not such a bad place to do this, even though the typical story is that this is the worst place in the world to be an artist. I'm not sure that's entirely true.
Well, we came back, so.
Well, yeah, we moved to Europe, for example, and tried to recreate some of the pieces that we created here. So we had a few pieces that the gallery picked up and said, can you recreate these for us? We worked with Italian craftspeople. And what here took 6 weeks and a few thousand Hong Kong dollars, there took quite literally 10 months. And
It was unbelievable.
10 times higher price, and the result is exactly the same. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just the same. And the other thing is this access to material. So, Paris is amazing in the sense that everybody there is exceptional in the creative world. Everybody is incredibly talented. So you're surrounded by a very inspiring set of people, but there's no materials to work with. There's nothing. It's sterile in a different way than these big Asian metropolises are sterile. There's no stone. There's no cheap hardware stores. There's nothing like this. So Hong Kong is very expensive rent, but other aspects of what we do are actually a lot easier here than in many other places.
First of all, just thank you guys. Really love the intentionality and consideration that you guys put into your process and what you do.
Thank you.
And I think I'm really pleased to hear you guys speak with such gratitude and understanding where you are and the position that you have and the fortunes that have been granted to you. So yeah, it's awesome. Regarding NOMAD, regarding home, I think a lot of us can relate to probably this idea of not really belonging. As an immigrant to my, I guess, home country, I never really fit in. And then I left that, and now I'm here, again, not really fitting in. For me, I found that home is the family I've created. And I'm sure the two of you, seeing how you guys are like two peas in a pod,
Visually.
it's really, it feels like home is you guys. But working together as a couple always can have its challenges. And I'm curious, it's like, how do you guys navigate disagreements of concept or idea? Sorry.
Surprisingly, we actually don't. We don't really disagree in a really strange way.
I disagree.
It sounds like so toxically positive, but we are really, really on the same page about what we do. And I think it's because we met when we were 18 years old and we've been together for 16 years. So like the like universe of Batten and Kamp and our ideas about the world and about design are just really formed together. So although we come up with different ideas, it really feels like it's coming from the same place. So as I say, like I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but for us, it's so seamless working together.
Yeah.
It makes our relationship better rather than causing like a point of strain or challenge.
However,
Wow.
no, what I would say is I think what has worked so well about it for us is that we've been together for like a very long time, especially for our generation and for our age.
Yeah.
And we were together for a very long time before we started working together.
Yeah.
We always knew that working together would be sketchy. Like it's a dangerous thing to do because we really value our relationship above all else. And so when you put your work, your finances, everything into one bucket, it means that all the tensions and all the stresses are really condensed. And that has the potential to make things difficult. But I think because we were so afraid of it, we waited a very, very long time, and we had all the mechanisms in place before we began.
So it's a really related question. I think what came through in the concept of home, you talked so much about all the elements of home, but you didn't actually tell us that you as a couple is so core. It just came through the talk and came through the film. So I'm just curious to know if you feel like if it wasn't this couple, if you weren't together,
We'd be fucked. Truly.
No. Hell no. Hell no, it's so scary. I mean, honestly, I don't think I would be brave enough to even own my own practice on my own. So like hats off to all of you who are doing it. But I mean, I just can't even like, we always talk about if we break up, we both come from divorced families, so we're not under any illusions that this is a sure thing. And we talk about what would happen after, and Batten and Kamp in any form couldn't exist without the two of us. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I think coming back to the thing about like permanence and ephemerality, we've always had that view of our relationship, that it's not guaranteed that it's forever. Sometimes it's good to just look at yourself as a statistic. Like statistically, there's a fairly good chance that we will get divorced. Just like statistically, there's a fairly good chance that we get ill or whatever. I think it can be a healthy thing to remind yourself of often, so that it's like we're really so cliche, but we're really like choosing this every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the biggest strength that has enabled us to do all of this together.
And I think the idea of choosing when you're running your own business, you really do have to choose it, because I think most of you know that it's not easy. So in those hard times, which are often more than less, you have to be like, okay, but I'd still do it even if there's a pandemic, and I'd still do it even if there's no money coming in. So that choice is a nice reminder. It's like I've selected myself to be here. I still want to be here. That keeps us going. Thank you for your question.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more big round of applause for
Thank you.
You guys can stay here for now. I
Okay.
want to introduce Nick over because, as every month, Nick has created a unique piece of art using everybody, and I'm gonna let him introduce it.
Oh my god!
So, having looked at your work, you're very hands-on with the rocks. I've heard that you pick up pieces of rock and go back to your studio.
That's true.
So
Yes.
usually my design process starts with an iPad sketch. I decided to put that away. I just grabbed some paper and this is all just from scratch by hand and looking at your work as inspiration. Very limited color palette. As matching your style.
So that's
So I hope you like it.
This is amazing. Thank you
amazing.
so much.
so much. It's incredibly kind.
Thank you. It's so beautiful.
Look how good it is. Oh, of course, yeah. Oh my god, I love it so much.
Thank you, everyone.